I knew something was wrong the second I saw his face. We were sitting around the dining table at my mother-in-law's house, one of those obligatory Sunday lunches that had become routine since my son, Ethan, was born. The kind of gathering where I smiled through passive-aggressive comments and pretended not to notice the subtle ways my parenting was constantly being questioned. Ethan was 3 years old enough to sit in a booster seat at the table, old enough to use a spoon with only occasional drops and spills. He'd been excited about lunch, chattering about the big boy plate Grandma had promised him. I'd been distracted, talking with my sister-in-law about something inconsequential. I can't even remember what now. My husband, Marcus, was in the kitchen helping his father with drinks. The house was full of that comfortable noise of family gathering, conversations overlapping, someone laughing in the other room, the clatter of dishes. And then I heard it. A small, distressed sound. Not quite a cry, but close. I turned to look at Ethan, and my heart stopped. His face was bright red, not the normal flush of a warm room or the pink of embarrassment. This was different. Angry, splotchy red that spread across his cheeks and down his neck. His eyes were watering, and his little hands were frantically rubbing at his mouth. "Ethan," I said, my voice sharp with sudden fear. He looked at me, his expression confused and uncomfortable, and then he started to cry. Not his usual cry, not the "I'm tired" cry or the "I want attention" cry. This was distress. Real distress. I was out of my chair instantly, crossing to him, my hands already reaching for his face. "Baby, what's wrong? What hurts?" He couldn't answer through his tears, just kept rubbing his mouth with his small fists, his face getting redder by the second. My mind raced through possibilities. Allergic reaction, choking. Was he breathing okay? I checked. His breath was coming fast but steady. Not choking then, but something was very wrong. "Marcus," I called out, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. "Marcus, come here!" The conversations around the table had stopped. Everyone was staring now. My mother-in-law, Diane, standing near the kitchen doorway with a serving spoon still in her hand. My sister-in-law, Jennifer, frozen mid-sentence. My father-in-law looking concerned but unsure. Marcus rushed in from the kitchen. "What's wrong?" "I don't know. His face just... Look at him!" Marcus knelt beside Ethan's chair, his own face draining of color as he took in our son's distress. "Buddy, what happened? Did something hurt you?" Ethan just cried harder, his little body shaking. That's when I looked down at his plate. I hadn't been paying attention to what Ethan was eating. That sounds terrible, I know, like I'm admitting to negligence. But the truth is, I'd trusted that in his grandmother's house, surrounded by family, the food on his plate would be appropriate for a 3-year-old. I'd trusted wrong. The plate in front of Ethan was half empty. He'd clearly been eating before whatever happened. Macaroni and some kind of red sauce, a few pieces of bread on the side. Nothing that should have caused this reaction. But looking at it now, really looking, something seemed off. The sauce was darker than typical Mariana, thicker, and there was a sheen to it, an oily, glistening quality that didn't look right. I leaned closer, trying to understand what I was seeing, when the smell hit me. Spicy. Not subtly spicy. Aggressively, unmistakably spicy. My stomach dropped. "Did someone put hot sauce on this?" I asked, my voice very quiet, very controlled. The room went still. Diane spoke first, her tone light and dismissive. "Oh, it's just a little seasoning, dear. Nothing to worry about." "Seasoning?" I looked up at her, my hands still on Ethan's shoulders as he continued to cry. "This smells like it's been doused in hot pepper." "I barely added any, just a touch to give it some flavor. You know how bland children's food can be." I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. "He's 3 years old.
He doesn't eat spicy food." "Well, maybe that's part of the problem," Diane said, crossing her arms. "Children these days are so coddled. In my day, kids ate what was served and they learned to like it." Marcus had gotten up to get a glass of water, pressing it to Ethan's lips. "Drink, buddy, slowly." Ethan took small sips between sobs, his face still alarmingly red. I stood, forcing myself to stay calm even though rage was building in my chest. "Diane, you don't put hot peppers on a toddler's food. That's not teaching him to eat different things. That's hurting him." "Oh, don't be so dramatic," she said, but I caught something in her voice, defensiveness masking as dismissal. "He's fine. A little discomfort never hurt anyone." "He's crying," I said flatly. "His face is bright red. He's clearly in pain. How is that fine?" My father-in-law, Robert, finally spoke up. "Maybe we should have checked with you first, sweetie," addressing his wife, "before adding anything to his plate." "I don't need permission to season food in my own kitchen," Diane snapped. And there it was, the real issue beneath the surface. Not that she'd hurt Ethan, not that she'd done something dangerous and thoughtless, but that I'd dared to question her authority in her own home. I looked back at Ethan's plate, really examining it now. Everyone else at the table had pasta too, but theirs looked normal. Light red sauce, no excessive oil, nothing unusual. Only Ethan's plate was different. Only his food had been specially seasoned. "Why?" I asked, my voice quiet but sharp. "Why did you only put it on his plate?" Diane's expression flickered. Just for a second, something like guilt or shame crossed her face before her defensive mask returned. "I told you, he needs to learn." "That's not an answer. Everyone else has normal pasta, just him. Why?" Silence. Jennifer shifted uncomfortably in her chair, suddenly very interested in her napkin. And that's when I knew. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't some misguided attempt at expanding my son's palate. This was deliberate.
I picked up Ethan's plate, carrying it closer to the light so I could examine it properly. The macaroni was swimming in sauce, far more than anyone would normally serve, and the sauce itself was wrong in every way. Too dark, too thick, with an oily slick across the surface that caught the light. Small flecks of red pepper were visible throughout, and the smell was overwhelming now that I was paying attention. This wasn't a touch of seasoning. This was intentionally heavily spiced. I set the plate down and looked around the table. Who prepared this? Marcus had taken Ethan out of his booster seat and was holding him, still offering him sips of water. Our son's crying had subsided to hiccuping sobs, but his face was still flushed and his eyes were red. "I made the pasta," Diane said stiffly, "as I do every Sunday." "Did you serve everyone's plates or just Ethan's?" A pause. Too long of a pause. "I served the children," she said finally, "Jennifer's kids and Ethan." I looked over at my niece and nephew, ages 5 and 7. Their plates were clean. They'd already finished eating, long before Ethan had started crying, and their pasta had looked normal. I'd noticed it peripherally when I had first sat down. "Show me their plates," I said. Jennifer quickly stood and took both her children's empty plates to the sink, but not before I'd seen enough. No excessive oil, no dark heavy sauce, no pepper flakes. Just Ethan's. Why was his different? I asked again, my voice harder now. Marcus spoke up, confusion and growing anger in his tone. "Mom, what's going on? Did you do something different to Ethan's food?" "I just thought," Diane started, then stopped, searching for words. "He's always so picky. You two are so careful about what he eats. I thought if he tried something with more flavor." "He's 3, I said, cutting her off. He's picky because he's 3. That's normal, that's developmentally appropriate, and the solution isn't to burn his mouth with hot peppers without telling his parents. I wasn't trying to burn his mouth. But you did, I said flatly. Look at him. Look at our son. He's in pain because you decided you knew better than his parents what he should eat. Diane's face was red now too, but with anger rather than pain. I have raised 3 children. I think I know something about feeding a child. Then you should know better than to do this, I shot back. Robert put a hand on his wife's arm. Diane, maybe you should apologize. Apologize? She pulled her arm away. For trying to help? For trying to teach him to eat properly instead of catering to his every whim? It's not catering to keep hot sauce away from a toddler, Marcus said, his voice tight with controlled anger. That's just basic common sense. Jennifer spoke up then, her voice quiet and uncomfortable. Mom, I think you should have asked them first. She whirled on her daughter. Don't you start! You know how ridiculous they are about his food. Everything has to be organic, everything has to be bland. I don't care if you think we're ridiculous, I said, my voice rising, despite my efforts to stay calm. He's our son. And you don't get to decide to feed him something potentially harmful without asking us. Potentially harmful, Diane laughed, but it was bitter and sharp. It's hot sauce, not poison. To a 3-year-old, it might as well be. You saw his reaction. That wasn't discomfort, that was pain. Ethan whimpered against Marcus's shoulder, and that sound, that small, scared sound from my baby, broke through whatever restraint I had been holding on to. I moved toward Marcus and took Ethan from his arms, holding him close, feeling his overheated little body against mine. We're leaving, I said quietly. What? Diane looked genuinely shocked. You're leaving over this? Yes, I said. We're leaving because you hurt my son and you won't even acknowledge that what you did was wrong. I looked at Marcus. He nodded, his jaw tight. But Diane wasn't done. You're overreacting, Diane said, her voice rising. As usual. I stopped at the doorway to the dining room, Ethan still in my arms. Overreacting? My child is crying because his mouth is burning. How is that overreacting? Because you're acting like I tried to poison him, she snapped. I was trying to expand his palate, trying to help you raise him properly instead of what? I asked, turning to face her fully. Say it. Instead of what, Diane? She pressed her lips together, clearly wanting to say something but holding back. You think I'm too soft on him, I said, my voice steady despite the anger coursing through me. You think I baby him. You think I'm raising him wrong. That's what this is really about, isn't it? I didn't say that. You don't have to say it. You show it every time we're here. Every comment about how in your day children were tougher. Every time you undermine my decisions about his food, his bedtime, his discipline. You think you know better than I do how to raise my own son. I have experience, Diane said defensively. I've done this before. Maybe if you listened. I do listen, and when your advice is reasonable, I take it. But this, I gestured toward the dining room, toward Ethan's abandoned plate. This wasn't advice. This was you deciding to do whatever you wanted with my child because you don't respect my authority as his mother. The words hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. Marcus stepped forward. Mom, she's right. You should have asked us before giving him anything unusual. Diane turned on her son, eyes flashing. You're taking her side? There are no sides, Marcus said firmly. There's just what's right, and what you did wasn't right. I raised you 3, and you all turned out fine. I fed you what I thought was best, and no one questioned me. Times have changed. Parenting has changed. And regardless, Ethan isn't your child. It's ours, and we get to make decisions about what he eats. Jennifer spoke up again, still uncomfortable, but clearly feeling like she needed to say something. Mom, you did you were pretty determined about it. Everyone looked at her. What do you mean? I asked. Jennifer glanced at her mother, then back at me. When you were in the other room earlier, talking on the phone, Mom was making the plates, and she specifically made Ethan's different. She added extra sauce to his, and then
She trailed off. Then what? Marcus pressed. Jennifer swallowed hard. Then she added a bunch of hot sauce. Like, a lot. More than just a little seasoning. The room went silent. Diane's face had gone pale. Jennifer. I'm sorry, Mom, but she needs to know, Jennifer said, her voice gaining strength. She kept saying Ethan needed to learn to eat real food and that his parents were too soft on him. That you'd never even notice because you weren't eating the pasta anyway. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. She'd counted on me not eating the pasta, had planned for me not to notice what she'd done to Ethan's plate, had deliberately waited until I was distracted to serve it to him. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't even misguided good intentions. This was calculated.
You planned this, I said quietly, the realization settling over me like ice water. You deliberately waited until I wasn't paying attention. Diane's mouth opened and closed, searching for words. I didn't... Mom, Marcus said, his voice low and dangerous. Tell me Jennifer is wrong. Tell me you didn't deliberately put hot sauce on my son's food while his mother was out of the room. Silence. Tell me, Marcus repeated, louder now. I thought, Diane started, then stopped. Her composure was cracking, defensiveness giving way to something uglier. Fine, yes, I put hot sauce on his pasta because he needs to learn, because you two coddle him like he's made of glass, because someone needs to teach him. He's 3 years old, I shouted, my own composure finally breaking. He's a baby. And you deliberately fed him something that would hurt him because you think we're too soft? It wouldn't have hurt him if he'd just stop, Marcus said, holding up his hand. Just stop, Mom. There's no justification for this. Diane's eyes filled with tears. Whether from guilt or frustration, I couldn't tell. I can't do anything right in this house anymore. Every decision I make is questioned. Every bit of advice I give is rejected. I'm her grandmother, but I'm treated like I don't matter. You do matter, I said, struggling to keep my voice level. But being a grandmother doesn't give you the right to override his parents, and it definitely doesn't give you the right to hurt him to prove a point. I wasn't trying to hurt him, but you did, I said. Intentions don't matter when the result is my child in pain. Robert finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. Diane, you need to apologize. I'm not apologizing for trying to help. You're not helping, Marcus said sharply. You're undermining us, and you're hurting our son in the process. Diane looked around the room, at her husband's disappointed face, at Jennifer's uncomfortable expression, at Marcus's anger, at me holding Ethan protectively. Fine, she said, her voice tight. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I tried to feed my grandson a proper meal. I'm sorry I tried to teach him something useful. I'm sorry I cared enough to... That's not an apology, I interrupted. That's you being defensive and sarcastic. Well, what do you want from me? Diane snapped. You want me to grovel? To admit I'm some terrible grandmother who was trying to hurt a child? Because that's not what happened. I want you to acknowledge that what you did was wrong, that you crossed a line, that you put your opinions above his safety and our authority as his parents. Diane stared at me for a long moment. Then she straightened her shoulders and said, I think you should leave. We're already leaving, Marcus said coldly. Good, because clearly I can't do anything right anyway. Clearly I'm just some meddling old woman who doesn't know anything. No one said that, Robert started. You don't have to say it, Diane echoed my earlier words. It's clear what you all think of me. She turned and walked out of the room, leaving the rest of us in uncomfortable silence. Jennifer looked at us apologetically. I'm sorry, I should have said something earlier. It's not your fault, Marcus said, running a hand through his hair. This is all on Mom. I looked down at Ethan. His face was still red, but his crying had mostly stopped. He was exhausted, his little body heavy against mine. We need to go, I said quietly. He needs to rest.
Marcus nodded. I'll get his things. As we gathered Ethan's jacket and shoes, Robert pulled me aside. I'm sorry, she's been struggling lately. With you all growing up, making your own decisions, she doesn't know how to just be a grandmother without trying to be a mother too. I understand that, but understanding doesn't mean accepting. She crossed a line today. I know, and I'll talk to her, but she's proud. She won't apologize right away. I'm not asking for an apology right away, but I am going to protect my son. And if that means limiting contact with someone who deliberately hurt him, that's what I'll do. Robert nodded sadly. I understand. We left without seeing Diane again. She stayed in her bedroom, the door closed, while we bundled Ethan into the car and drove away.
The drive home was quiet. Ethan fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from crying. Marcus drove with both hands tight on the wheel, his jaw clenched. I can't believe she did that, he said finally. I knew she could be pushy, but deliberately hurting him? That's crossing a line, I finished. Yeah, he glanced at me. Are you okay? No, I said honestly. I'm angry, I'm hurt, and I trailed off, searching for the word. I'm betrayed. I trusted her. I left my son in the same room as her, eating food she prepared, and she used that trust to hurt him. She didn't mean to hurt him, Marcus said, but he sounded like he was trying to convince himself. Didn't she? I asked. Jennifer said she put a lot of hot sauce on his plate. Not a little, not a normal amount, a lot. She knew it would burn. She counted on it. She wanted to prove that he could handle it, or that we were too soft, or whatever her reasoning was. But she knew it would be painful. Marcus was quiet for a moment. You're right. You're absolutely right. I don't want to keep him from his grandmother, but I can't let this happen again. It won't, Marcus said firmly. I'll make sure of it. When we got home, I carried Ethan inside and laid him on the couch. His face was still flushed, but returning to normal. I got him some cold water and a wet washcloth for his face. How do you feel, baby? I asked gently. Mouth hurts, he said, his voice small. I know, I'm so sorry. Why did Grandma's food hurt? My heart broke. He didn't understand. He thought it was his fault somehow, that he'd done something wrong. It wasn't your fault, at all, I said quickly. Grandma made a mistake. She put something in your food that was too spicy for you, but it wasn't your fault at all. Am I a big boy? He asked, and I realized she'd probably told him big boys could eat spicy food or something similar. Made him feel like he'd failed some test by reacting to the pain. You're perfect exactly how you are, I said, pulling him close. You don't need to eat anything that hurts you to be a big boy. Being a big boy just means growing and learning and being kind. That's all. He nodded against my shoulder, already drifting towards sleep again. After I put him to bed properly, I found Marcus in the kitchen, staring at his phone. My mom texted, he said, showing me the screen. I didn't mean to cause such drama. I was just trying to help. I hope you understand. Not an apology, not an acknowledgement of what she'd done wrong, just deflection and justification. What do you want to do? Marcus asked. I thought about it carefully. I think we need to set some clear boundaries. No more unsupervised meals, no more special treats that we haven't approved, and she needs to acknowledge that what she did was wrong before we're comfortable bringing him back to her house. That's reasonable, Marcus said. I'll call her tomorrow and lay it out. Do you think she'll accept it? I don't know, he admitted. But if she doesn't, then we have our answer about what kind of relationship she wants with our family. The next morning, Ethan woke up back to his normal self. The redness gone, his energy returned, asking for breakfast with his usual enthusiasm. But I couldn't shake the image of his face yesterday, red and confused and hurting. Marcus called his mother while Ethan was watching cartoons.
I could only hear his side of the conversation, but it was enough. No, Mom, that's not what I'm saying. Because he's our son, that's why. It doesn't matter if you didn't mean to, you still hurt him. We're not punishing you, we're protecting him. Mom, listen. Mom, if you can't respect this boundary, then we can't bring him over. The call ended badly. Diane had refused to accept any responsibility, had continued to insist she was just trying to help, and accused us of being dramatic and overprotective. Marcus looked drained when he hung up. She's not going to apologize. Then we stick to the boundary, I said. She'll play the victim, he warned. She'll tell everyone we're keeping his grandson from her. Let her, I said. Anyone who matters will understand, and anyone who doesn't understand isn't someone whose opinion I care about.
The weeks that followed were difficult. Diane did exactly what Marcus had predicted. She told the extended family that we were being unreasonable, that we were keeping Ethan from her over nothing, that we were punishing her for trying to help. Some family members took her side. Others quietly supported us. Most just tried to stay out of it. But we held firm. No unsupervised visits until she could acknowledge what she'd done and agree to our boundaries. No meals at her house unless we prepared the food or were present when it was served. Jennifer called me a few days after the incident. "I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner," she said. "At the table, I mean. I should have warned you when she was making the plates." "Why didn't you?" I asked. Not accusatory, just curious. "Because She paused. "Because I've learned that speaking up against Mom just makes everything harder. And I thought maybe it would be fine, that Ethan would eat a bite and you'd notice and that would be it. I didn't think she'd put that much on his plate. I didn't think he'd have such a strong reaction." "He's 3. Of course he had a strong reaction." I know, and I should have said something. For what it's worth, I think you're right to set boundaries. She's been getting worse lately. About everything. About control. That was interesting. Worse how? She keeps trying to micromanage my kids, too. Telling me I'm doing things wrong, undermining me in front of them. It's like she can't let go of being the one in charge. Have you talked to her about it? "I've tried," Jennifer said. "But she doesn't hear it. She just hears criticism and gets defensive." We talked for a while longer, and I realized Diane's behavior wasn't just about me. It wasn't just about disagreeing with my parenting style. It was about her struggling with her role in the family as her children became independent adults. But understanding her struggle didn't mean I had to accept her behavior. 3 weeks after the incident, Diane finally texted Marcus. "Can we talk?" He called her, putting it on speaker so I could hear. "I've been thinking, and I might have overreacted at lunch that day." "Overreacted how?" Marcus asked carefully. A long pause, then, "I shouldn't have added anything to Ethan's food without checking with you first. That wasn't my place." It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't acknowledge the full extent of what she'd done, but it was something. "Thank you for saying that," Marcus said. "We appreciate it." Can I see him?" Diane asked, and for the first time I heard real vulnerability in her voice. "I miss my grandson." Marcus looked at me. I nodded slowly. "Yes," Marcus said, "but we need some ground rules going forward." "Like what?" "No feeding him anything we haven't approved, no changing his routine without checking with us, and if we say no to something, that decision needs to be respected. No arguing, no undermining, no going behind our backs." Silence on the other end. Then finally, "Okay, I can do that." "And if you can't," I said, speaking up for the first time. If you break these boundaries again, we'll have to take a much longer break from visits. Not to punish you, but to protect Ethan. I understand, Diane said quietly. We arranged a visit for the following Sunday, at our house this time, where we could control the environment. And it went okay. Diane was stiff and formal, clearly uncomfortable with the new dynamic, but she followed the rules. She asked before giving Ethan a snack. She didn't question our decisions about his lunch or his bedtime. It wasn't perfect. Our relationship would probably never be what it once was, but it was functional. And more importantly, it was safe. That night, after Diane had left and Ethan was in bed, Marcus and I sat on the couch together. "Do you think things will get better?" he asked. "Maybe. Or maybe this is just what our relationship with your mom looks like now. Less close, but with clearer boundaries." "That makes me sad," he admitted. "Me too. But not as sad as the alternative. Not as sad as constantly worrying about whether my son is safe." He pulled me close. "You're a good mom. I don't tell you that enough. You tell me plenty, but thank you." "I mean it. The way you protected him that day, the way you held firm even when my mom made it difficult, that's exactly what he needed." I thought about Ethan's little face, red and tearful. Thought about how he'd asked if he was a big boy, like he'd somehow failed. No one gets to hurt my kid. Not even family. Especially not family, actually, because they're the ones who have the most access, the most trust, the most opportunity to cause harm. I know, and I'm sorry you had to be the bad guy. I'm not the bad guy, I'm the mom, and sometimes being a mom means making people uncomfortable when you enforce boundaries they don't like.
6 months later, things had found a new normal. Diane visited regularly, but always at our house or in public spaces, where we controlled the environment. She followed the boundaries we'd set, sometimes reluctantly, sometimes with barely concealed frustration, but she followed them. She and I would never be close. That trust had been broken too thoroughly. But we were civil, respectful. We could exist in the same space for Ethan's sake. And Ethan had no memory of that day. Too young to retain the specifics, though he went through a phase of being very suspicious of red sauce, which broke my heart every time I noticed it. But he knew he was loved. He knew he was protected. And as he got older, I'd make sure he understood that being loved meant being safe, that people who truly cared about you didn't test your limits to prove a point. Looking back, I realized the incident had taught me something important. Boundaries aren't mean. They're not punishment. They're just the structure that keeps relationships healthy. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for your child is to make other people uncomfortable when they try to cross those lines. Some people would say I overreacted that day, that it was just a little hot sauce, not a big deal, not worth the family drama. But those people didn't see my son's face, didn't hear his confused crying, didn't have to explain to a 3-year-old why the person who claimed to love him had deliberately caused him pain. And those people didn't have to make the choice I made between keeping the peace and keeping my child safe. I chose my child. Every time I will choose my child. And I'll never apologize for that.